Okay, we're going to add another little piece here to the adding and subtraction of fractions. Okay, we're going to add and subtract mixed numbers. Okay, and we remember from last night's lesson that a mixed number is a number that has a whole number part and a fractional part. So we're going to start with 1 4/5 plus 2 1/10. Okay, and the first thing that I want you to do is circle the symbol. Okay, that's going to be your plus sign or your minus sign. Okay, and I want you to circle it so that you don't forget which operation you're doing. Okay, so in this case, we're adding. Okay. Step 2, add or subtract fractional parts. Make sure you have common denominators. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at 4/5 and 1/10, and I do not have common denominators. So I need to go ahead and change these into equivalent fractions with common denominators. My lowest common multiple between 10 and 5 is 10. So I'm going to make new fractions with 10 as my denominator. Okay. Okay. 1 times 10, 1 times 10, so 1 times 1, so I've got 1/10 here. 5 times 2 is 10, 4 times 2 is 8. So now I've created 1 8/10 plus 2 1/10. So now I can add them. So 8/10 plus 1/10 is 9/10. Now I'm going to add or subtract the whole numbers. Okay. 2 plus 1 is 3. So my answer to this problem is 3 9/10. Now let's try another one. Let's try 8 1/2 plus 6 3/5. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is circle the sign so that I remember that I'm adding. Okay. Then it says to add or subtract the fractional parts, make sure I have common denominators. Okay, so my fractional parts are 1/2 and 3/5. They're not the same. My lowest common multiple between 5 and 2 is 10. So I'm going to create equivalent fractions with 10 as a denominator. Okay, 5 times 2 is 10, so 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 5 is 10, and 1 times 5 is 5. So now I have 8 and 5/10, plus 6 and 6/10. All I've done so far is created equivalent fractions with common denominators for my fractional part. Now I can add. 5 plus 6 is 11 over 10. Now I'm going to add my whole number parts. 8 plus 6 is 14. Okay. But what do we notice about this fraction right here? What do we notice? This is improper. Okay? So, if the answer is an improper fraction, change it to a mixed number and add it to the whole number. Okay. So, remember, in order to change an improper fraction to a mixed number from last night's lesson, I'm going to divide the numerator by the denominator. So my numerator is 11 divided by 10. 10 goes into 11 one time. And I have 1 as a remainder, which becomes the numerator for the fractional part. The divisor becomes the denominator. So now I have 1 and 1/10. So I'm going to take this 1 and I'm going to add it to that 14. So that's going to become 15. And then my fractional piece is now 1/10. 15 and 1/10. Okay. Let's try a subtraction one. Let's do 2 and 4/5 minus 1 and 1/2. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to circle that symbol so that I remember this time I'm subtracting. Okay, and then I'm going to subtract my fractional parts, making sure I have common denominators. Well, I've got 5 and 2, so they are not the same, so I'm going to have to create new fractions. And the lowest common multiple between 5 and 2 is 10. Okay, 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 5 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 4 times 2 is 8. So now I have 2 and 8/10 minus 1 and 5/10. So now I can subtract. 8 minus 5 is 3, so that's 3/10. and 2 minus 1 is 1. So the answer to this one is 1 3/10. Okay? Let's try one more. Let's do 3 2/3 minus 1 1/6. Okay. I am subtracting. I do not have common denominators. So let's see, my lowest common multiple between 3 and 6 is 6. One times 6, so 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 2 is 4. And then my whole numbers, 3 and 1. So now I can go ahead and subtract. 4 minus 1 is 3. And my denominator stays the same, of course, 3/6. And subtract 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay. 2 3/6. Uh-oh, that leaves me for the final step of simplify if possible by dividing the numerator and denominator by the GCF. Well, my greatest common factor between 3 and 6 is 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And 6 divided by 3 is 2. So my final answer is actually 2 1/2. I know that was a lot, and we will have a lot of practice.